How's everybody doing? Woo! For the third time. Welcome to the panel about 3D printing and cosplay. I really like the marketing plan presentation template, so we're sticking with this for a little bit.
What are you selling?
I have some fine leather jackets you might be interested in. But basically the agenda is just the intro. Who is this guy? Can he be trusted? We'll get into 3D printing basics, and then specifically talk a bit about 3D printing and cosplay, the pros versus the cons. Then we'll talk about like modeling, where to get them, how to like edit a little bit. Some quick slicing, printing, post-processing settings you want to do after things are printed, and then we'll try to leave about half of the time for like Q&A that we'll have set up here. And then, if you stay to the end, I have a very limited number of things I brought. Did not expect this many people, so they will run out, unfortunately. But don't punch each other. No. Say hello to the BigRig. Hi, everybody. All right, no more template jokes, I promise. I'm BigRig Creates. I run a YouTube channel, BigRig Creates. Done a bunch of stuff with a lot of like making things from like Pokémon and Nintendo properties, bringing them to real life with 3D printing and other gimmicks and technology that I kind of combine them. Ego check for myself. Has anybody seen my stuff before? Oh, wow. Okay, awesome. Woo! So that's kind of what I do. Some quick stats. I've been 3D printing since 2020. I've owned 10 3D printers by this point. 6 of them are currently active, and I don't have a third fact. Just a little bit of raising your hands here out of curiosity's sake. Who has 3D printed before? Okay, wow, that's like a good 30 to 40%. All right, cool. Who kind of wants a 3D print but thought it was a bit intimidating? Okay, yeah, cool. Well, good news. What was that? Bamboo A1. Well, I'm here to say that thankfully in the year of 2026 now, 3D printing is so much easier than when I started back in 2020 through like a lot of work through the community and big companies. There's been a lot of exciting things going on in the scene. So yeah, let's just kind of get into it. First, we're going to start with the history of 3D printing. Back in the 1980s, we're skipping that. We're getting to the good stuff. But we do need to talk a little bit about how they work. Probably about like 50% of you kind of already know how most 3D printers work. Let's get a little explanation here.
Okay,
3D printers
are like onions.
They stink?
Yes. No.
Oh, they make you cry?
No.
Oh, you leave them out in the sun, they get all brown, start sprouting little white hairs.
No. Layers. Onions have layers.
3D printers
Have layers. Onions have layers? You get it. We both have layers.
Oh, you both have layers. Oh. You know, not everybody like onions.
Back to slideshow. So yeah, basically how everything is built up in a 3D printer. Okay, there we go. Is by layer, the 3D print is built up, right? And so eventually, at the end, you'll get something at a certain resolution. We're going to start with FDM, which is typically plastics and some polymers. Maybe you'll get some like foam mixtures or some carbon kind of mixtures into the plastic as well. But basically what happens is you take a spool of filament, you feed it into the machine, and it melts that filament onto the actual bed itself. And eventually you get something that looks like your 3D object. And the lower layer heights you have, the higher resolution it will look. It's kind of like polygons if you think about it. It's similar but different. FDM is also the most common consumer version of 3D printing as of right now. So if you hear people talk about like bamboos or prusas or things like that, this is the kind of technology they're talking about. There's also SLA printing, which is resin printing, which some of you may have heard of before. And how it works is a platform is dipped into a vat of resin, and then there's a little like LED screen underneath it, and it quick cure flashes it because it's reactive and hardens due to UV light. Then every little layer, it like dips it like at a higher amount, and then it kind of comes out kind of like the Terminator, all drippy. And there's a bunch of different post-processing things you need to do to like wash and cure it. It's a pain in the butt. It's unlike FDM. You know, you can just pull it off the thing and it's good to go. But with resin, it's a sticky situation. It's also a bit more expensive and heavy, like per square inch. So there's a lot to keep in mind when you're trying to decide whether or not you want an SLA or an FDM printer. This model I see all the time, and it puts me through what I call the cycle. The cycle of, wow, that model looks really cool. And then you do more research into what it takes to use a 3D printer. There's a lot of toxins. So the room that you're in, you need to filter out all those toxins outside. Otherwise, they're going to be like cause respiratory issues, or even worse, depending on, you know, what kind of, if you have pre-existing health problems. So that's a pain in the butt. Also, you can't touch any of the resin or any of the parts with your hands. If it gets on you or your skin, the moment you go outside, you will become like a vampire, and it will burn your skin immediately the moment the sun comes out, or any sort of like UV light, just because it reacts and dries that way. So yeah, you think about that, and then you're like, I'm not going to deal with resin printing. But then you see these again, and it's like, oh man, I really want to resin print. So I stick to FDM. That's my specialty. If you have questions about resin printing, I could answer some of them. I have a little bit of experience with that, but for the most part, I'm more of an FDM kind of guy. There's technically other 3D printers, but you'll never use them, so let's move on. So the pros of like 3D printing and cosplay is that there's less hands-on skill required for intricate shapes. Let's say like a sword that has like tiny little details. You know, you won't have to like go in there and be a craftsman or a wood carver. You can have the 3D printer take care of most of that for you, which is really nice. It can be cheaper than ordering things off Etsy. You guys know how expensive cosplays can get if you order them online, right? You know, might as well do it yourself at a certain point. And then you can also customize things. Let's say you want to shift how the size of like one of your props, or you want to like have etchings of very specific symbols. You know, you can do all of that. Like it's the possibilities with 3D printing aren't endless, but they feel like it at certain points the more you kind of dive into it. They are incredible for props. This is my like number one use case, I think, for 3D printing. It's a little bit more difficult to do wearables. You can do it, especially with some of the squishier materials like TPU. But for props, they are a godsend. You don't have to make everything out of foam. The plastic's right there. They can be sturdy, maybe not impact resistant, but they are sturdy objects. And it's, you know, at the end of the day, the models for these, there are so many of them that exist right now. They're really easy to find. They're really easy to share. And if you just do a Google search, you will find like an entire list for any property, anime, game that you could possibly imagine. It's really cool. Now let's get into some of the cons of 3D print and cosplay. As I mentioned before, they can be really challenging to integrate as wearables because they are rigid. Again, there's exceptions. There are more flexible materials that exist. They're a bit more challenging to print out, though. And, you know, with all this plastic, it can be very heavy. There's ways to mitigate the weight if you do like less infill, or if you specifically make the model in a specific way. We'll talk about a little bit about that later. And then one of the worst things about 3D printing that everybody hates, post-processing. Woo! It's fun! No, what are you talking about? I hate it. Wood filler for days. Absolutely. You're gonna see that in a second. But yeah, because everything is layer by layer, you're going to see something called layer lines, which are these little grooves, like indents between every single thing. So ideally what you do is you sand it with different grits of sand. You use a lot of wood filler to kind of like to get through the gaps to make things a lot more smooth. Otherwise, it does have that 3D printer look to it if you see all these kind of like lines going up and down solid surfaces. And that can take hours, days, depending on how committed you are to the prop you're making. And one of the worst things is I experienced this weekend is it can break in travel. I have a Tenna cosplay, which I'll be trying to showcase tomorrow. Has a bunch of electronics inside. It's gonna talk. It's going to have all the sound effects you could imagine. But unfortunately, I guess I made somebody mad in baggage today at Delta, and they absolutely decimated this yesterday. So I'll try to put it together. If you see me around with the Tenna that talks and has all these animations and stuff, feel free to say hi. But I'm gonna have a fun night tonight. This is my friend Super Lewis 64. He does a bunch of cool things with like props and taking things from like games and turning them into controllers. So this is a video. I kind of cut it up a little bit for brevity. So we'll just watch this like 4 minutes of his process of taking something from a game, 3D printing it, kind of showing what some of the pros and cons were for him making this giant greatsword from Elden Ring.
This is Elden Ring's greatsword, and this is my greatsword. And today I turned this greatsword into a controller that I can play Elden Ring with. That means every heavy swing my character does in game is activated by a heavy swing that I do in real life. And y'all, I'm not gonna lie, my arms are hurting. But hey, I already know what you're about to ask. Lewis, why are you even doing this? Well, when I was a kid, video games used to come with some really bad but some really cool peripherals. And after looking at these controllers, it got me thinking, if Elden Ring came out in 2005, what kind of goofy controller would be packaged with it? It has to be something so iconic that when you see someone playing with it, you're like, damn, that boy back there is playing some Elden Ring. And I think I'm safe to say that the greatsword might be one of Elden Ring's most iconic weapon. It's big, it does big damage, and it's a Berserk reference? Say less. Come on, say less, say less, say less. At the beginning of this project, I was going to pick the Moonlight Greatsword. However, I feel like I need way more subscribers on my channel before I even think about spending $450 on a prop. Either way, now that I've decided on what sword I want to turn into a controller, it's finally time to make a plan to do that. The goal of this project is to play Elden Ring with an actual greatsword controller, so we need to do the following. Step 1, make your greatsword. That part should be really easy to do and nothing can go wrong. Step 2, create some hardware and software that can emulate an Xbox controller.
I will be skipping
Step
over
3,
the
attach the hardware onto the greatsword's handle.
the hardware
And
stuff,
for step
but if you want to
4,
check out his channel, super cool guy, Super Lewis 64.
And finally, step 5, profit. And by profit, I mean by this step, I should be able to play Elden Ring by literally swinging a greatsword around. With the process laid out and ready to go, I only have one big question for y'all. Hey, do any of y'all know how to build a greatsword? Because, I don't. Okay, after a little bit of researching, I came up with 2 plans. The first plan had me building the greatsword out of foam like some sort of cosplay prop. This will help make the greatsword lighter in weight and more importantly, make it not too expensive to make. However, I do have some bad news for everybody. I'd rather y'all find this information out through me instead of through somebody else, so here goes nothing. I'm not an artist. I am sadly a programmer.
Boo,
Okay,
boo programmers.
my skills aren't that terrible, but I do know I'm not ready to make a 7-foot sword out of foam. However, on the bright side, I think I'm decent enough with computers, or at least good enough to try out Plan 2. 3D printing the entire greatsword. One of the benefits of this plan is that I don't need to craft the sword itself. The only thing that I have to do is find a 3D model of the greatsword and then just print it out, which is easy enough to do, but there are some noticeable downsides to this plan. Like for starters, did I mention that this sword is more than 6.5 feet tall? The sword is so big that even the parts that were split to fit a 3D printer had to be split again to fit mine. This shouldn't be a big issue for me because smaller print sizes should mean shorter print times, which means each piece should take around 2 to 3 hours to finish, and I shouldn't expect 6 hours per piece? And as much as I want to film a whole week
He
of
does
3D
have
printing, let's
a
just
bit of
skip
an
to
older
step 2
3D
and start
printer,
talking
though.
about
So if
making
you
the
get a 3D
hardware.
printer
Luckily
today,
for
that's
me, the Great
probably
Sword
going
is
to
a
cut
really
down some
simple
of the
design.
time.
So all I really need to do is find the base.
He's
to put
using
all the 3D
dowels here
parts
to kind of
onto.
like put everything
For this
together,
build,
which is
I decided to
common.
use a
Typically, you
giant
want
wooden dowel
to make
to keep
things
it all
a
together.
bit more
Now,
hollow
for the
than he
people who
did.
didn't fail
There are
physics twice in
slicer
college
settings
like
to do
I
that.
did.
You can also take things
kind of already
into,
see where this is going. Now, you
if
might
it's
already
CAD,
know
you
that
could
putting
take
a
into
lot
like
of weight on
on-shape.
half of the wooden
If
dowel is
it's
going to be a really bad idea.
not- if it's
but
more
we'll
organic,
save
there
that when we
are
get to
other
the
ways with
post-mortem
mesh
part of the
mixer.
video because I messed up pretty bad.
Yeah, this is insane. And that can also be the problem with like dowels and
After a couple of days of crafting, I was able to build
But you
the
could see,
entire
like,
greatsword.
just
I
how
knew the greatsword was going
much
to be
heavier
huge,
this
but
is in
brothers,
foam. Like,
this is
have any of you like
big.
built things with foam props before? Much more wieldy than something like this.
I would pop off.
So that's why, like, I
if
love
my
3D
arms
printing,
Didn't hurt,
but
like
it
if
has a
my
time and a
arms
place. It's not
were
for like
fighting for
every
their
single
freaking
project you
life.
can possibly.
Oh my gosh! The greatsword controller also has a built-in guard function if you hold it vertically. It's way too heavy for me to do consistently, but at least I programmed it in. And you know what? I'm kind of done with all this nerd stuff. I think it's finally time to give the greatsword its biggest test. Can I actually beat a boss with this greatsword controller?
You'll have to watch the full video to find out. I have to give my friend his plug. All right, I'm sorry. All right. So, now some of you are probably asking like, "Oh, what 3D printer should I buy?" That's always a big question people ask. Disclaimer: a lot of my videos are sponsored by Bamboo Labs, so I'm pretty biased. So, Andy, did you put this in here? Okay, that's just rude. That's unacceptable, dude. Okay, all right. That being said, my recommendation is actually for FDM printing is still a Bamboo Lab printer. When they came, woo, yeah, let's go. When they came onto the scene, it did kind of change the FDM 3D printing game. Before, you would have to like manually level out your 3D printer. There was so much like tasks you would have to do to maintain your printer and to get things to like even print out correctly in the first place. The moment Bamboo came in with their investment, changed the game completely. There's so many automated things it just does for you, and it is kind of like the first printers where you can kind of just plug it in and it just works. Obviously, there are still issues from time to time that you'll have to deal with. But in comparison to what we had back in 2020, which was just felt like 3 sticks and a motor attached to it, the life is so much better. There are other options like the Prusa Core 1. That's a lot of people do enjoy that. It's more open source as well if you're more of an open source kind of person. And even Creality, the king of clones in the 3D printing space, they still have some solid options nowadays as well. A lot of people back in 2020, they'd start with a Creality Ender 3, my man. And basically from there, you would get more advanced options the more you went into it. But now, for like, I don't know what they cost anymore, but like now for like $250, $300, you can get a Bamboo A1. It's a very good starter printer. That's my recommendation if it's your first time, and you might just want to use it from time to time. But if you're looking to get serious, right now the P1P is probably the best bang for your buck. I forgot. Especially with certain other things going on with the government in China, it changes from week to week. Just under $1,000. Okay, yeah. That's with the AMS system probably. So that is also a big selling point about Bamboo printers are the AMS systems, which allow you to do multicolored prints if you don't want to paint everything by hand and you have enough filament. Something I really enjoy doing because I hate printing or I hate painting. Sorry. Models. Let's talk about models now, right? So if you have your 3D printer, what are you going to do? How are you actually going to get something from your computer onto your 3D printer and in your hands? Well, not those models. You get level 1 is what I call just downloading. You're, kind of like a casual casual 3D printing person, you want to get some knickknacks, some doodads, or some props. And a lot of props are out there are already fantastic. You can get things from like Yegi is kind of an aggregator that I like to start with to see because it pulls from different sources, kind of like the Google of 3D models, if you will. Maker World, which is Bamboo's platform, a lot of makers are incentivized to have really high quality, usually free models there as well. Printables is the Prusa version as well. They have their own marketplace. Most models are free. I think there are premium models as well. Cults is where I actually get a lot of my things, especially for Pokemon prints. ZZZ Monkey ZZZ has some really high quality stuff for really cheap. Actually, no, for free. I kind of forgot. I'll have to ask them again. We've worked together on some things. And then there's CG Trader. I've also gotten the thing. That's where if all of the other ones fail, I typically end up at CG Trader because that's where I would have to actually make a purchase. And then technically there's Etsy. I hate Etsy as a platform, but there are people who sell models there. So Thingiverse, right, I forgot to mention them. That's where it all started. Thingiverse has kind of gone downhill over the past couple of years, so I kind of didn't even want to mention them. If you know, you know. So what was that? You know what? You have a good point. I should have done that. I agree with you. Yeah, it is. Thingiverse is better than Etsy. So as you can see, I just did a quick search on Zelda for Maker World, and look at all these high-quality models that pop up immediately. More search, like there's just so many models out there nowadays. Now we get to level 2, which is like ripping a model from a video game. Can be either a really easy process or a really difficult process, depending on the game you're trying to rip from. You're going to probably be looking up a bunch of tutorials on how to do this. You'll need Blender. You'll need plugins to actually make the files work with Blender, and then you can export them as like as a STL or an OBJ, because those are the most 3D printer friendly files. As you can see here, with a 3D model, Isabelle here, you see on the right-hand side, there's like bunches of different like layers of textures and like UV mappings to like make all the shaders work and everything. And what you're kind of left with is typically not a super usable 3D model. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. But one of the main things, I'm about to show a video that kind of illustrates this, but one of the main things is when you're looking at a 3D model of like a video game character in game, they'll look more texturized or have more, it looks like they have more details on them than their actual 3D model has. Once you strip away all of the textures and everything, you're left with a much more blobby kind of thing, and you're like, wait, what happened to like, I don't know, like the cool like arm textures or these little engravings? I need that for my cosplay. So there's a bit more work that has to go into getting those engravings back into the 3D models. And I did this once for the Zonai shield from Tears of the Kingdom. I made the whole thing with like a hologram fan to like really showcase that off, and there was a lot of engravings, that I want to put on there. So here's me doing that.
After ripping my physical copy of the game, I used a tool to extract the models from the game. Thank you, WaterTune, for your hard work on this one. Now, here in Blender, we're left with a smooth-looking model. What happened to all the intricate designs? Well, to explain that, I'm going to give you a short lesson on how game designers create 3D models for games. Wait, hey, get back here. It's not that complicated. I can explain it like a sandwich. You like sandwiches, right?
This is an old video of mine. My humor's gotten better, I swear.
Okay, cool. Let's take the model and its 2D JPEG texture as our 2 slices of bread. Now, this could be our sandwich, but it's not super appealing. So developers use a bunch of ingredients and math to make it look like a model is a lot more detailed than it actually is. And using all of these tricks is a lot cheaper than using extra polygons. And now when we put the sandwich together in the game engine, we get this beautiful shield. But how do we add these details back into the model so it can be 3D printed in the real world? Thankfully, there's an online tool that lets you take this normal mapping and reapply it back to the model. It's not perfect, but with some finagling, we get a good 3D representation of depth here. Speaking of mapping, there's this unused file for all the circuit-looking lines that's supposed to make it glow, similar to when Mineru's mech is powering on for the first time. It seems to have been cut from the final release, but I went ahead and painstakingly traced and carved out the design because I had an
back
idea,
when I used
and I'll get to
Tinkercad.
that soon.
Oh my god. Okay, so yeah, typically when you when you rip a file from a game, you're probably going to have to use 3 or 4 programs to get it to something that you actually want to print out. And then we get to level 3, modeling things from scratch. Hey, good luck on that. I don't typically do that. I do from time to time. But let me give you, this is something I'm not going to go in depth on. You're probably going to have to watch like 13 different tutorials on how to model. Now you can kind of, now with props and things like this, you can have 2 different options. CAD or dealing with organics, right? So CAD is more like your engineering kind of design for 3D models. Tinkercad is a very good beginner browser-based software, and it's free. I think it should still be free. If you really want to get started, just kind of getting your hands dirty with like measurements and things like that, Tinkercad is my recommendation for starting. And then from there, you can move on to more advanced CAD things like Onshape, also browser-based. That's what I use nowadays. But of course, a lot of people use Fusion 360. For organics, you're probably going to have to use, if that's more like sculpting with clay as opposed to doing the more analytical, very mathematical CAD design. For organics, you're probably going to end up with Blender. A lot of people, it's a whole course you're going to have to take to be able to do things in Blender. But Mesh Mixer is also a very good tool for 3D printing and dealing with like surfaces or dealing with like broken things that you need to kind of repair. So those are my recommendations. You might find other resources for other programs, but this is kind of my workflows. These are the things I've used in the past. And yeah, you might use a combination of a lot of these things with existing models you find online. So learning at least the basics of these programs is very, very useful. And you know what's actually a pretty good program is Microsoft's built-in 3D viewer. There's a lot of things you can do to just kind of cut out shapes out of other shapes, and it works surprisingly well. It ain't that bad. I highly recommend using 3D viewer, especially if it's like your first time dealing with 3D printing. You can do basic like resizings and things like that. And basic, they're called Boolean operations, where you like remove things from other things or combine models together. Slicing. Okay, so now you have your model, you have your 3D printer. How do you translate that model into something that can actually be printed? Well, you need slicer software. This converts a 3D model into machine code that the printer can actually read. And this is what results in the actual commands for the nozzle or platform if it's SLA. Some of the biggest things for beginners that you'll want to take note of are wall loops. That's how solid and thick the outer walls of like the shell of your 3D print will be. More is good for like impact strength, but it will take longer amounts of time and will typically lead to a heavier object. So inside those walls are you're left with like a hollow shell. And if you didn't plan on the thing being a hollow shell, you want it to be like a solid object, that's where infill comes in. So it'll be like all these zaggedy lines on the inside of the actual model itself, and that's what gives it the structure in the interior without it completely just being a full plastic blob. Never use grid, as that's a default. Every slicer uses grid as like their options. I highly recommend using adaptive cubic. It's going to still have about the same amount of strength without wasting your time and wasting your filament. People like Gyroid 2 for more solid things as well. Use a slicer. What is this about? Oh, was that supposed to be? Whatever. Post-processing. So obviously, as I mentioned before, once you get once the print is done, you'll have the actual object, and it's going to have all these layer lines, or maybe a little bit of defects because you might have had to put in some support systems, because it goes layer by layer, but it can't print in thin air. So if we go back here, you can see that there's those green things are support systems that hold things up while it's printing. So those need to be removed. They sometimes leave some artifacts. And then, of course, there's the layer line. So how do you get from, like, this owl to Mr. Smooth Owl? I like Mr. Smooth Owl. He looks so much better. Oh, who let me yap? I just got, yeah. Post-processing is kind of a case-by-case basis depending on your print. It depends on, like, how visible are the layer lines? How much time do you want to spend sanding? Are there welding gaps? Like, is it a multiple-piece thing that you had to glue together? How do you get rid of those gaps? How much painting do you want to do? I always recommend starting with some sort of, a primer, 2 or 3 layers of light coats of paint, and then a finisher if you really want to protect it. This is me post-processing, going through like the post-process things from one of my videos, where I built like a life-size Spiritomb that was Pokedex accurate. And here's me just kind of doing all the post-processing on the base and how much effort it kind of took.
So
you kind
after
of get an
fixing
idea.
that, 2 more prints, that looks much better. Also, pro tip, when using snap fits to put your pieces together, make sure you scale your tolerances, or this could be you. But finally, after getting everything smacked together, we have to make a little trip since my new place doesn't really have a yard for me to do post-processing. So I snuck onto my friend Harry's property while he was at work.
I'm Harry.
And there, I made a mess with wood filler.
Wood filler for
sprayed the
days.
whole thing from top to bottom, sanded everything down, and repeated the process again and again. And the neighbor dog was not having any of it.
Ta-da. So yeah, it usually takes hours and hours. You want to probably set aside like half a day just to like do all the sanding, do all the spraying, because it's a time-consuming process. Unfortunately, my least favorite thing. Okay, did I miss anything? What were you thinking? Yeah. True. Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. I will yap a little bit about different materials. So, as I mentioned, well, I guess I didn't mention, PLA is going to be like your starter, basic, hard plastic that everyone starts out with 3D printing typically. Or PETG, that's also a different kind of material. However, throughout the years, we have been able to put in like more materials. There's like carbon fiber infused ones if you need, but it's hard to print. It depends on the brand. Yes, they can be. I've experienced that with a skateboard I printed. He said that, yeah, sometimes the layer lines between things, like the actual, like the strength of layers, they don't adhere to each other as strongly as like a PLA or something like that, other more traditional, harder plastics. So when you start out, I would start with PLA just for testing, but there are more slightly harder to print materials like TPU. Thank you. TPU. It's more squishy. It's a bit more stretchy, but it's harder to print out, and it can get moisture inside of the roll really quickly. So you typically have to buy a dryer or maybe like a food process dehydrator in order to like dry it out before you actually print. There's a lot more materials. I think there's like a new foam one that came out recently. I wanted to try that one, but it seems even a little bit more advanced for my tasting. But foam, I think, would be a really cool thing to get into specifically for cosplay props for the obvious reasons that it's squishier, it melds a little bit better. But I've heard it is very tricky to print out from time to time. Oh, ABS. I haven't even touched ABS. I don't touch ABS because it's toxic to breathe, so you need to like filter that out, and I just don't have the time to set that up and unset up like a vent every time. So ABS is what a lot of people used to print with back in the day, but again, because of the toxic fumes it emits, people have kind of, for the most part, moved on to PLA, even though it's a little bit less like impact resistant. You know what? Would you like to come up to the mic, because I think it's just time for Q&A time. So we're going to set up this mic. My foot fell asleep. I can't walk. If we want to get lined up, if you want to ask your questions. Andy, thank you so much. if we have questions about 3D printing and stuff. Yeah.
Test.
Yep.
Test.
Thanks everyone else for coming though. Hope you learned something. Hello.
Hi. Yeah, hello.
There we go.
A little
Perfect.
bit. I had to be really loud and get too close. How easy is it to post-process TPU, and is it paintable?
So TPU, it is a bit more difficult to post-process because you can't just sand it because unless you have it really thick, you can't like sand it in the same way you can with like PLA and stuff like that. This is that squishy material. And when it comes to painting, I've tried. Oh man, there's an automotive. No, it wasn't automotive. There was a very specific type of spray thing used for adhesion that I did in my Kirby Air Rider video, and I forgot the name of it, but it does like melt other spray paints onto it. So if I don't have the name of it right now, I would, if you could check out that video. I'm not trying to shill myself here, but that video has me actually doing spray paint with TPU.
And follow up. Whenever you have, so I'm dealing with a, here, let me show you. I'm dealing with a Samus Dread Varia helmet.
A Samus, okay, yeah, I see,
currently.
yep.
And whenever I temperature base, I had it all done.
Yep.
All done. This automotive paint, Duplicolor metal cast.
Sure.
Love it. Runs like hell. And had it clear coated. I went to put the tubes on, and I chipped it back to the gold undercoat.
Okay.
So it was all done.
Yep.
And now I'm back to the base. And so I can sand it, bring it back down, but for some reason, I think it might have been the temperature in which I was kind of painting in. But the new sprays ended up like that. This crackly.
That is probably because you painted in a cold environment.
That's okay.
100%. So if it gets all bubbly like that, you painted it in cold environment. Okay. So definitely try to warm it up wherever you're spray painting.
I tried to, whenever I did that last time, is I tried to paint it outside and bring it inside.
Gotcha.
But I think the air, when it's sprayed, just...
Yeah, it's going to be all bloobity blabbity when you do it like that. So there's a question about like spray painting. If you ever see like bubbly cracks, it's probably the temperature issue. All right. Thanks for asking.
What slicer program do you use?
I use
or recommend.
I use Bamboo's in-house slicer. It's a fork of Lorca, which is a fork of Prusa slicer, I think. No, it's a whole weird thing. I just use Bamboo's built-in one. It works for the printers that I have, which is mostly Bamboo. So I highly recommend them, and it's pretty easy.
Will that work for other types of printers?
It does nowadays. Yeah. Okay. Printers you buy nowadays should work with it. Okay. I would double check it with Google, of course, though.
Got it.
Orca, yeah. If you're not buying a Bamboo printer, probably go with the Orca slicer for sure.
Got it. Is PLA toxic when you print it?
PLA, that's an interesting question. There's a whole video, if you remember this somehow, by Thomas Schlander talking about the air quality with PLA. I think he's more towards saying that it's probably not the best. However, there hasn't been really like any immediate like health issues with PLA just because it's more organic based and it doesn't have like known toxins like ABS does. I print without any ventilation and I run 4 to 5 printers at the same time. I can't say I recommend doing what I do, but you'll probably be fine if you are just in the same room as a printer with PLA or PETG.
Have you ever used Bondo instead of wood filler? And is there?
I have not. I know some people use like modeling putties sometimes as well for getting those like gaps filled in. But for the most part, I've been using wood filler if I really want it to look good.
Got it.
Sweet. You gotta watch out with wood filler though because it does react to like water. So you wouldn't want like those seams to melt or anything without protecting it first. All right. Thanks for the questions. Appreciate it. Hello there.
So I made.
Could you eat the microphone practically?
Is that better?
Can anyone hear her? Oh, okay. Cool.
Okay. I printed out Jinx's fishbone, so it's a massive prop, and I'm used to making things with foam. Mm-hmm. So I just got a printer like 2 months ago. I got a Bamboo A1.
Nice.
So fishbones is heavy, And I'm wondering, I decreased like the infill settings and stuff, and I was wondering if there was any other way to make it lighter, or is it just I'm not used to it and it's a giant prop? Or that I always adjust it in slicer settings.
Adaptive cubic instead of grid, if you haven't already tried that, that's going to make it a little bit lighter. And if you, are you already doing like 2 infill walls, or are you doing like more than 2 infill walls?
I don't remember how many I did. I think I did 2.
Yeah, that's probably default. Is it like a solid piece that you're working with?
No, I made it hollow. I tried to make
bye-bye.
like the decorative pieces hollow, and then like I think I did 2 or 3% infill.
Sure.
So
2 or 3%, yeah, and it still worked, or did it fall apart?
Fine.
Okay, yeah.
It was fine.
Yeah,
Is it just heavy?
It's just going to be heavy because it's plastic, unfortunately. That's like
I figured, but I still wanted to ask because like I'm used to crafting things, bigger things out of foam.
Yeah.
And it'd be lighter, so I'm like, is that just user error, or could I make it lighter?
it's just the unfortunate thing about 3D printing.
Yeah.
There might be like, you could look into some like, I know Bamboo is now selling a specific PLA specific for like craft like model airplanes that might be a little bit lighter, but that sounds a bit more on the expensive side.
Yeah.
But it could work if you want to tinker around with it. That's kind of why I showed the Super Lewis 64 video, just to really illustrate how heavy a big 3D prop can be, you know?
When I saw that, I was like, maybe that's why mine is doing that. But
Yeah.
I figured I'd ask.
Of course. Thank you
you.
for the question. I appreciate it.
Hi, so I've been struggling with dowels recently.
Dowels,
and, I had foolishly just trying to eyeball it and drill the holes as even as I can, using a couple methods for that. What would be the best place to implement dowel holes into the model itself? Is that something that can be done in the slicer program, or is that something more like on the Blender?
Yes. So let me think about that for a second, because you can, when you cut in a slicer program, you can slice models into multiple pieces so they can all be printed. And then there are settings, at least I know in like Orca and Bamboo, you can do pegs inside the actual thing. However, the bigger the model, you're typically going to want to make it more hollow. Oh no, that question answer. Wait, you're right there. So you want to probably make it more hollow. So ideally, you design the dowels in something like Onshape, or add them in with like Blender, just so it's kind of more in line with the design. 10 minutes. All right, perfect. But yeah, you typically, I would recommend trying first with the slicer, the built-in peg system that they already have, and then if you need to do more advanced things, go to like 3D Builder or something like that. Of course. Hello.
Hey. So probably 7 years ago, I took my first step into 3D printing. I got an Ender 3.
Yep.
It was pretty much, like you said, 2 sticks and a printer. So I guess in recent years, I was asking, what quality of life changes have come into 3D printing? And as somebody who's either first-time 3D printer or looking to get back into it, what should I look out for that would make my life easier and not want to throw the thing against the wall again?
Automatic. So what a lot of printers do nowadays is they automatically level the bed every print. So you don't have to worry about screws. The likelihood of your first layer just working is over 90% now. And the stress is out. Things are so much faster too. You might see a print fail at 6 hours with the old printers, and now not only are the print times down to 4 or 3 hours, but it's just going to work. You won't have to fiddle with clogs as much. If you had to deal with clogs back in the day, that was a big issue. Dude, they do so many weird things when you set up your printer. It's vibration motor calibration, and it's oh, I didn't even know I needed that. You can.
Yeah, it was auto leveling, and I believe print sticking was my biggest issue.
Yeah.
And then now it just sits next to the letterbox.
Most printers come with flexible sheets now, so they just pop right off, and it's perfect.
Great.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things. So if you had an issue, I used to have an issue with that. No longer.
Cool. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for the question. Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
So I'm kind of Benjamin buttoning 3D printing.
You're Benjamin buttoning 3D printing. You're going back to the older 3D printers?
No, I work with 3D printers as a day job.
Oh, really? Okay.
I work with more powder and metal 3D printing.
Oh, those kind of 3D printers that most people won't have, yeah.
Yeah, and with SLA and then filament.
Okay.
So recently I acquired a Creality Ender 6 from a family member,
Sure.
who are tired of messing with it. They just don't know what's going on. They said, you know a lot.
Yep.
You take it. Difference is I'm so used to just calling people to fix a 3D printer, and I know that the Creality system is the kind of, you kind of put it together yourself. What kind of resources would you try to share or know of for printer maintenance, printer repair, and just kind of modification of your own devices?
So I honestly, if Creality has a wiki for that specific thing, they do have a lot of like troubleshooting things. Otherwise, it's going to be like the old school days where you go to forum posts and Reddit. Like those, unfortunately, are the best places you can find answers. Are forum posts and Reddit. It's good old classic troubleshooting, especially with the older printers that they might not put as much time and effort into troubleshooting stuff. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you.
Of course. Good luck. Good luck. Hello. And then we'll probably, after your question at the end here, we'll probably cut things off and we'll be good to go. And I can give away thingies. Yeah, I have a bunch of Porygon Wii magnets to give out. So that's what everyone will get at the end. Hopefully everyone. I hope I have enough. Hello there.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing well.
I had a question. Like, have you experimented with other ways of post-processing? Like, I noticed usually like you sanding or wet sanding.
Yep.
But recently I seen a video where someone like they made a bigger like I think it was like Five Nights at Freddy's like costume, but instead of just sanding it themselves, they did what they called an acetone bath, where they put the print in like a bin, put like paper towels with acetone, and like it sanded it for them. I was like, never knew you could do that.
So the acetone bath, the vapor method, you can only do that with ABS because PLA does not react in that way. So you have to deal with the toxic fumes of ABS. But if you can deal with that, and then you can either there's a lot of things in the market that already exist for like rotating it and spraying the acetone on it, or you could like make your own with like a Lazy Susan situation. But you would have to go with ABS, which is going to be a bit more involved, but it does make that really smooth, shiny look because it just melts all the layers kind of back together. You're going to lose a little bit of maybe some of the texture or resolution, but if it's more of like a flat or curved print, then you're going to be golden. So that it's a bit of a time investment, but if that's something you would want to do, I'd say go for it. Safety, yes, there's also like safety things, so you have to vent that out as well. Make sure.
So just for like the different kind of plastics, there's going to be different methods you can use, like depending on like how safe you're going to be, or like how ventilated you have your spaces and stuff.
Exactly. Yep. Different chemical properties per different thing, and all of these things are everyone's done a tutorial on everything at this point on YouTube. So, all right.
All right, that was a pleasure. Thank you.
I hope I answered it. Thank you. Hello.
Hi. So you've been raving a lot about how the bamboo is really good at like the auto leveling.
Auto leveling.
How fantastic is it? Because my partner has been struggling with his ender. Like every 2 enders he's had so far, he's had to like level them himself. He even got one of those things that like levels it and like touches the things. I look at his little
chep
thing.
one, yeah.
Yeah, I just how good is like the investment in it? Because like I think that's gonna be like the next step that like I want to take with our 3D printing things.
It will change your life.
That's his main thing he's been struggling with, and that's the only reason I don't touch any of his stuff is because he has to level it and he has to mess around with the screws and like he just lets them sit on the shelf now because it's just so much to mess with.
Weird question. Does he have hair?
Actually, he just shaved his head.
I was going to say this is going to prevent him from going bald out of all this stress.
He's already on that market, unfortunately, looking at his dad. So
we're not going to accelerate it by dealing with leveling anymore. If you get like a bamboo or Creality or something like this in 2026, all those problems are going to be solved 100%. Yeah. Sorry you've had to deal with that for so long.
He gets them at Micro Center, so
gotcha.
We love Micro Center. We love a deal.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for the question. Appreciate it. Thank you all for coming and even sticking around to the end. Hello. Thanks, Andy. Everyone say thanks, Andy. Thanks, Andy.